When we think of retirement, we usually imagine kicking back and relaxing. However, this isn't the reality for many struggling retirees. If you've recently visited a grocery store, department store, or fast food restaurant, you might have noticed an uptick in elderly workers. The current economic climate is driving millions of senior citizens to return to work. According to the United States Senate Special Committee on Aging, Americans are re-entering the workforce en masse due to rising living costs. Janet Campbell is one such individual. A former teacher, she retired at 62 with dreams of caring for her grandchildren and traveling the world during her golden years. Unfortunately, life had other plans for this senior Chicago resident. Living on a fixed retirement income, Janet soon realized she couldn't keep up with her bills, especially her monthly mortgage payment. Her only option was to get a part-time job to make ends meet. Before going further, make sure to subscribe to the channel and leave a like below this video if you find this video informative. Now 74, Janet works for United Home Care, a non-profit home health and community care organization. She uses a walker to get around the office, where she spends her days checking emails, making calls, and putting together promotional materials, tasks far from what she had envisioned for her retirement. "I couldn't afford to pay my mortgage, and I didn't want to be left out on the street, homeless," she told CBS Chicago, adding that she doesn't think she'll ever be able to fully retire. For countless retirees living on a fixed income, making tough choices between paying bills or buying food and medicine is all too common. "It's all about the rising cost of living," said Azura Benen Cor, the regional coordinator for Southeast National. "A lot of people are struggling. They retired and are forced to return to the workforce. When a person retires and goes on Medicare, many don't realize that there will be co-pays, deductibles and premiums," added Pat Selby, the director of Hotland RSVP. "Sometimes the choices people make can have serious medical repercussions. It comes down to either paying your utility bill or taking as much insulin as you need," emphasized Selby. With the escalating costs of housing, food, transportation and energy, many Americans, like Campbell, feel they will never be able to fully retire. A survey found that about 25.5% of U.S. adults aged 50 and older who are not yet retired expect never to retire, and 70% are concerned about prices rising faster than their income. Far too many people lack access to retirement savings options, and this, coupled with higher prices, is making it increasingly hard for people to choose when to retire, explains in V. Cadis Waren, an AARP Senior Vice President of Research. Everyday expenses continue to be the top barrier to saving more for retirement, and some older Americans say they never expect to leave the workforce. Today, the reality of retirement in America means working into old age, and that's a fact we must accept. Over the last 2 decades, the share of the workforce aged 55 or older has almost doubled. Data from the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics shows that senior citizens are increasingly turning to the gig economy to supplement their incomes and savings. In 2023, nearly 1 in 3 independent or gig workers were over age 55. Among Americans 65 and older, 19% were still working last year, almost a 2-fold increase from the late 1980s. Pew Research estimates that this age group will account for nearly 60% of all labor force growth over the next decade. Last year, the average retirement age was 62, up from 59 in the early 2000s. Older people aren't just delaying retirement, but also working longer hours. On average, this group's annual work hours are almost 30% higher than they were in 1987. Farisa Ghilarducci, a retirement expert at the University of Michigan's Health and Retirement Department, highlights that U.S. seniors are working harder than ever before, but she argues that this is not a real solution for the nation's worsening retirement crisis. The expert claims that the American retirement system is leaving behind the bottom 90% of workers. In her latest book, Work, Retire, Repeat: The Uncertainty of Retirement in the New Economy, Inequality shares some sobering statistics. Of the 55.8 million Americans aged 62 or more, only 10% are both retired and financially stable. In other words, approximately 50 million senior Americans are currently at risk of experiencing financial insecurity. They are either retired but living below the standard of living they enjoyed while working or still working because they can't afford to stop. She found in analyzing data provided by the University of Michigan that it shouldn't come as a surprise, since 3 in 10 Americans aged 59 or older do not have any money put away for retirement. The problem of American workers not having enough money for retirement hasn't disappeared. In fact, it has worsened due to growing U.S. wealth inequality, the expert outlines. She stresses that politicians' ideas of solving this national crisis by having people work longer are actually fake solutions. They promote this narrative because it's a cheap resolution to a very expensive problem. Employers endorse it because it means more labor supply in the market, resulting in a weaker labor force in terms of bargaining power. Meanwhile, many individuals buy into this narrative because it makes them think they can control when they want to retire. However, the expert reveals that when people approach retirement age and don't have enough money, they stay in the labor market, but not in their career jobs. Instead, these workers have to take much lower-paying jobs, which often hasten death, disability, morbidity, and pain. According to Inequality, we are forcing a group of people to live the end of their lives with more pain and wear and tear than others. The US government is failing to improve the Social Security problem. Tens of millions of retirees are finding that their monthly Social Security payments are simply not enough to cover their basic needs. A study conducted by the Motley Fool discovered that 44% of retired citizens are considering returning to work because of inflation. Respondents said their Social Security benefits have not adequately kept pace with the cost of mortgages, rents, groceries, and gasoline. Needless to say, trying to go back to work in your 70s, 80s, or 90s is not easy. But for those who have to choose between rejoining the workforce or not eating 3 meals a day or not having life-saving medication, the decision is clear. In 2023, the average Social Security payment was less than half of what the average retired American spent per month. Figures from the Social Security Administration revealed that while the average payment stood at roughly $1,900, retirees spent an average of $4,800 to get by each month. Unfortunately, the current economic environment has been very challenging for all of us. Compared to just 3 years ago, the typical household in this country is spending an extra $1,069 every month just to maintain the same standard of living. Even those with 401k plans haven't been able to shield their finances from inflation. It's been over 40 years since the US shifted from traditional pensions to private plans. But this transition hasn't been as successful as officials had hoped. In the 1980s, financial analysts predicted that if people started saving in their 20s and 30s and kept their savings in the market throughout their working lives, they would have enough to supplement Social Security and maintain their pre-retirement living standards. However, real-life careers and labor market experiences are far more complex than an Excel spreadsheet projection. Most people go through 2 or 3 recessions, and life events like moving, divorce, or emergencies that require drawing down savings can disrupt these plans. Inequality explained in her book that the 401k system does not provide the financial security retirees need. It is a do-it-yourself system where people lack the right tools to make it work. She compared it to going to the grocery store to get what you need to fix plumbing without knowing how. Consequently, many are entering retirement without enough money and no way to make it last their lifetime. Sadly, the cost of living crisis is only going to get worse because our leaders refuse to make significant changes in how they spend taxpayer dollars. Our politicians in Washington have borrowed so much money that we're paying over $1 trillion a year just in interest on the national debt. We now spend more on interest on the national debt than on national defense. Instead of slowing down, our politicians continue to add to this immense debt load. With all that said, it's clear that inflation is not going away anytime soon, which is concerning since many people are already on the edge financially. Last month, home foreclosures rose again. According to a new report by real estate data provider AARP, there were 32,610 foreclosure filings for the economy. Lately, in addition to the conflicting rise in unemployment last month, other signs of economic deterioration include stagnant retail sales, slowing consumer spending, weak industrial production, declining manufacturing orders, increasing consumer debt, depressed new housing starts, falling annual earnings for full-time employees, and rising commodity prices. For many at the bottom of the economic ladder, it feels like the economy has already collapsed. The retirement crisis means that many more Americans will soon join the ranks of the poor as the economy rapidly moves in the wrong direction. A new economic crisis has already begun, and it's set to reach catastrophic proportions in the months and years ahead. Americans are in far more trouble than they realize, and the dark clouds on the horizon are getting closer with each passing day. What are your experiences with this troubling subject? We look forward to reading your comments. Thank you for watching. Make sure to subscribe and leave a like below this video for more future insights.